It's the Inside Scoop with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal, who just dropped a column, I'm told, on the Mets firing Carlos Mendoza. So, Ken, enlighten us. What do you think of this news and how it affects things for this team going forward?
I was not surprised because after the nightcap on Wednesday, the six-error game, that was a game that essentially screamed fire the manager. And the Mets waited a day, but it was coming. We kind of knew it was coming. But as you see there, what I wrote was the greater culprit is the president of baseball operations, David Stearns. Not exactly a secret, that opinion, and not exactly shared only by me, because basically the entire industry understands that this team is flawed. The roster construction was flawed. It's not that Mendoza was blameless. And when a team plays like it did on Wednesday night, again, it screams fire the manager. But the real question here going forward is going to be, has owner Steve Cohen lost some confidence in Stearns, the guy he hired after basically waiting 2 years before the 2024 season? Remember, Scott, that season was Stearns' first and Mendoza's first, and it went great. The Mets had a surprising run to the NLCS, but after starting last season 45 and 24, best record in the majors, since then, they've got the fourth worst record in the majors. So clearly a lot has gone wrong.
All right. Well, they were hot starting the year last year. Do you feel like Stearns overreacted to the collapse at the end of the year in the sense of he changed not only the roster and got rid of some stalwarts on the team that he had to resign, but also the coaching staff that also had some of that success during that time before the collapse of the second half?
Well, I'm not sure Stearns acted alone with regard to the coaches. Cohen might have had some input there. In fact, I would guess he did have some input there. And that is his prerogative as owner. He wanted some changes. It was an epic collapse. They got beaten out by a small market team with 83 wins for the final playoff spot, the Cincinnati Reds. So you could understand their frustration. And I even understood at the time their desire to do something different. Their fans kept saying this. We haven't won this with this group of players, which was true, but it's not like they had flopped other than that end of last season. So the one mistake, in my opinion, that will haunt them perhaps is Alonso. Alonso, as I wrote in this column, was a homegrown guy. He was a guy who proved he could succeed in New York and the perfect right-handed complement to Juan Soto. He was also durable, and the players they brought in were not all durable. Polanco, of course, Robert Jr., even more so, and now Simeon's on the IL as well. Bichette, he's been healthy this year, but he's got a history of lower body issues as well. So that to me was the question. And from a sheer talent standpoint, when you put the names on paper and you added up all their collective wars, the projections for this team were quite good. If I don't, if I'm not mistaken, they were projected to be third in WAR in all of baseball, just because of the names on their roster. But that's assuming those guys would be healthy. Many of them weren't, and many of them you could not have expected to be healthy because they had injury histories. So again, there is a lot that has happened with this team, and now it's Stearns' job to clean it up. And I don't expect them to fire him before the draft and the trade deadline. He's going to get through the deadline. At the end of this season, maybe then Cohen at least takes a look at it. But as I said yesterday on my own show, there's a value to continuity. There's also an issue in the game where, okay, you want to fire someone, and the Mets are having this issue with the manager right now. Who is the replacement? Now, Andy Green is going to be the Mets interim manager, but do we know who their full-time guy going forward, the exact perfect candidate would be? I would suggest we don't know that. And the same would hold true for a president of baseball operations position.
Ken, do you watch football much? Do you know who Jerry Jones is?
I know who Jerry Jones is, but I don't watch football much. I did cover
Do
football one time, covered the Cowboys in a Super Bowl.
Okay. So do we have the baseball's version right now with Stevie Cohen in New York? Like, I don't want to have that much part of to do with it, but I would definitely love this best player and this best player.
I wouldn't go as far as that, Erik.
Okay.
And certainly they've spent a ton of money. Second highest payroll in the game. It's crazy what they've spent in the last few years without much results under Steve Cohen. But Jerry Jones, to me, from what I understand, and I'm sure football fans out there will correct me if I'm wrong, he is more of kind of guy who interferes. And I don't know that Cohen does that very often. Yes, I do believe he wanted some changes at the end of last season, but I don't see him as intrusive as Jerry Jones. But if you're talking about a guy who spends a lot of money who hasn't had success, yes, there is a parallel. And remember, Steve Cohen, when he took over, said he wanted a World Series title within 5 years. It's now year 6, and they're still waiting, and they're not close.
One of the things you said on Fair Territory was the game's not teeming with GM types, kind of what you just said before my last question. Is that because being a GM is hard? Is that because being a GM is a long-term thing? And if he goes and fires Stearns, you essentially just cut the own cord that you started setting up, and Stearns never had a chance to make his 5-year, 6-year plan.
Well, their plans have shifted repeatedly since Stearns and Cohen came together. So I wouldn't say this is a situation where, like a rebuilding team, they're operating on a 5-year plan. They had one plan, they changed, and they started another plan this year. It hasn't worked. We'll see plan number 3 or 4, whatever it's going to be, coming up next. Now, the question you ask, Erik, is a very good one. And I know some people objected in the game yesterday when I wrote that the game's not teeming with GM candidates. I'm sure if I polled people in the game, they go, oh, this guy would be good, that guy would be good. Guess what? There is a lot of homogeneity in this game right now. And a lot of guys who kind of have the same background, the same outlook. And you can understand that because the game has changed. And certainly with the rise of analytics, you need someone with a savviness to that, with the ability not only to understand all that, but to lead an organization. And finding someone to do both those things well is really hard to do. And let's face it, we've seen a couple of former players now become presidents of baseball operations. Chris Young had some real success with the Texas Rangers, won the 2023 World Series. Buster Posey, and we saw it this week when he had to deal with an issue that was a little bit different than the norm, he wilted and did not handle that well. So it's a big job. You're right. And it's not a job that someone can step into in New York City, of all places, and succeed quite easily. It's difficult. And Stearns is finding that. Stearns is a guy who had great success in Milwaukee, had success in his first year with the Mets. And he's a guy who is from New York, has a feel for the market, grew up a Mets fan. It's hard for him. And he seemed to be the guy who had the perfect profile. And I made this point in the column as well. The fact that they've gone through a few people now in that role under Cohen for a variety of reasons, it speaks to Brian Cashman's success as Yankees GM. And I know their fans get crazy with him all the time. Guess what? He's done it for nearly 3 decades, and he's done it at a pretty darn high level. And people should have a greater appreciation for that after seeing all this that has happened with the Mets.
Hey, SeatGeek is MLB's official ticket marketplace. And in addition to finding every single game on the MLB calendar, there are big events coming up very soon.
There's an all-star game. There's a home run derby. And if you think you're perfect and you can pick the right seat at the home run derby to get the most home run balls, you can get the little green dot, and that might be your lucky seat. Don't go red dot, though, because you might not get any balls. But go green dot, and get as many home run balls as you think you can catch.
Yep. You click the seat, you check out what your view is. Each ticket's rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. And that's what AJ's talking about. Green good, red bad, with those dots. And the code for you, Territory10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description of this episode. That'll help you download the app and get the code automatically added to your account so that you can use it later. Thank you to SeatGeek.
I know there's a lot of things that will surround this decision for the Mets, but their next manager. I'm not going to lead you to your answer because we already discussed this. What type of manager, what type of experience do you feel like is the next best manager for this roster for the Mets moving forward, whether it's Andy Green or somebody else after the season's over?
Well, what usually happens in these circumstances, Erik, they go with the opposite of what they had before. Carlos Mendoza was a longtime coach in the Yankees system, Aaron Boone's bench coach, but he was a first-time manager. So I would expect what Stearns would seek now is experience. Not necessarily the case, but that would be my expectation. Who are the experienced guys out there? Brandon Hyde is one. David Ross is another. Alex Cora is a third, though Alex Cora probably is ticketed for the Philadelphia Phillies if he wants to manage next season, reuniting with Dave Dombrowski. So I am sure Stearns will cast a wider net, and maybe Andy Green, who is a former Major League manager with the Padres, ultimately is his guy. But given the nature of the job and the nature of that clubhouse, they should bank on experience. And Mendoza was a guy, because he had worked for the Yankees and he had seen how Aaron Boone handled any number of issues, some of which were unique to New York and many of which weren't. He would have seemed to be kind of like Stearns, a perfect choice, and it didn't work out. So it would seem to me, you would at least need more experience in that job, but I can't predict what David Stearns is going to do.
No, we were just talking about the manager, and I think it's something that if the guys that are out there, the candidates that you were talking about, Cora, and we had talked about Pujols before, is there a fear for successful or not successful managers, experienced managers of coming to New York and accepting this roster in? And the easy answer is, well, there's only 30 of these positions, and if you want to get back into managing, but is there a fear? Because now you're talking about guys whose legacies as good as managers could be adopting this flawed roster.
If you're asking me if someone would turn it down that they went after, I doubt it for that reason.
Okay.
Now, one guy I didn't mention, by the way, is Rocco Baldelli, former Twins manager, East Coast guy from New England. And Albert Pujols, because he managed the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic, has managed in winter ball, is not exactly an inexperienced guy, given his career in Major League Baseball as well. So he's an interesting name. I don't know that anyone from Hyde to Ross to Baldelli to Pujols, right down the line, would fear the Mets job. If you're confident enough to be a Major League manager, you're confident you can succeed anywhere. And I would expect all of those guys feel that way. And Ross has managed in a big market, not New York, but Chicago is not exactly a small place. So I don't see that happening. I would imagine if you have a choice and you're one of these guys, and maybe the other choice is Philadelphia, like it would be for Cora, maybe you prefer Philadelphia, but they've got an aging roster. It's not perfect there either. So again, to answer the question without being too long-winded, I don't know that anyone would turn it down.
Ken, my last one on the Mets, for most people to relate now, other baseball fans, they just want to know if they can pry some of their players away. Do we think that we're getting closer to that point? I mean, you look at it and you're like, sure, they're hoping that they catch lightning and this is the next Don Mattingly situation. They win in 10 in a row, but it's unlikely. I would be very surprised. I'm sure you would be too. So, how much of a litmus test is coming up for the next couple of weeks with Andy Green and company before they go, all right, we got a few pieces to sell. Luke Weaver's having a great year. Let's deal him.
No doubt that is where they are. And yes, they traded David Peterson 2 nights ago to the Cubs, but that was a deal that made sense for them at this time and did not necessarily indicate a full-blown sale. However, if they don't play better, even if they play a little bit better, but it's still not good enough, they're going to have to make some trades. The obvious guys are Freddie Peralta, potential free agent, Brooks Raley, and AJ Minter, 2 left-handed relievers, both potential free agents. If you want to get aggressive with Luke Weaver, who has another year left, you could do that. He's been great. But I would think they intend to compete next year, and you'd probably want Luke Weaver on your team next year. So, yes, Scott, it definitely appears to be heading that way, that they are going to be sellers. They don't have a whole lot to sell, to be perfectly honest. I just listed the main guys. Peralta's been a huge disappointment. And lefty relievers, yes, they're incredibly valuable at the deadline, but they only bring so much.
Well, Ken, we did a lot of business, a lot of firing talk. We're going to finish fun on a Friday. This feels weird. I sit next to AJ half the year, and he's not here, Pierzynski. He's on assignment, on vacation, whatever we want to call it, right? We know where he is because he just visited the Pope, but he's not on our show because he's away. So you did, I would say, like the Lord's work by talking to AJ and letting everyone know what happened. So what do you have for us?
Well, first of all, he let it out what happened. And he was the one who posted on social media that he had visited the Pope and given the Pope the ball that was the final out of game 1 of the 2005 World Series, a game the Pope attended, was shown on Fox attending, and AJ knew that. And obviously he had a desire to visit the Pope. He was raised Catholic, AJ was, and it happened. He had some friends who helped arrange it for him, and it was an amazing thing. And I wrote about the meeting. AJ was gracious enough to take my call while in Italy. And, well, frankly, he had to take my call, right? But seriously, it kind of cracks me up. The whole thing cracks me up in so many ways. First of all, it's just cool to see a photo of AJ with the Pope. But the idea that AJ is some goodwill ambassador, spreading his good cheer around the world, meeting the Pope, giving gifts to the Pope, including a signed AJ Pierzynski jersey. I don't know what the people out there think, but I find it rather tickling, to say the least.
Well, you guys work with him too. I mean, Kratz, you're on with him almost every day of your life. Are you tickled?
I definitely am tickled that AJ got to add to his list somebody in a higher status than anybody else that he's ever name dropped about meeting and talking with.
Ken, I'll leave you with this. I felt like it was a cool moment because, sure, not many people get to meet the Pope, and that part is awesome. And I was with AJ right before he was about to leave because I'm in the studio with him, and he's in the office and picks up one of the prized possessions there with the baseball. He's like, I think I should give this to him. He didn't really like ask me, but he didn't tell me, and I'm the only person there. So I was like, yeah, I don't know what it's worth, and I don't even care. It's almost like giving it to a museum or Cooperstown or whatever. So it was just a cool moment where like, what's something really special that I possess that would mean more to him? So it was cool. Like for AJ,
cool.
he was
it's
like,
also
how do
really
I,
cool.
Impress
It's
him?
also really cool, Scott, and it has been from the moment the Pope was elected, the fact that he's a White Sox fan. It's cool. It's awesome. And obviously, when AJ introduced himself, the Pope said, I know who you are. You don't have to introduce yourself. And he was really touched that AJ gave him the ball. And the whole story is just great. And with the White Sox being good, that makes it all the better. And as I wrote, when AJ walked away, he was kind of ending the meeting, or leaving the meeting, I should say. He wasn't ending it. When he left the meeting, he said to the Pope, hey, the White Sox are in first place. And the Pope said, I know, man. I'm following this. It was great.
Yeah, this is a real fan here. This is really cool. Well, thanks for putting the story together. Obviously, everyone can catch it on line on The Athletic. Ken, have a good weekend. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Scott.